If you're visiting Costa Rica in the first months of the year, specifically January, February, March, and even April, you can't miss this first episode of Travel Rooted with Charlie from Oropopo Experiences. In this episode, you will learn tips on how to make more conscious decisions and get a better overall experience in your travels in Costa Rica, transportation, lodging, and tours. What foods are in season for the months of January, February, and March that you shouldn't miss because they're yummy, yummy, yummy. Charlie's and Pia's, myself, favorite farmers markets and what to order to get the full Tico experience. How to have a more conscious mentality as a traveler, even if you don't know anything about it, and the rewards that come with it. The best way to interact with and spot wildlife in Costa Rica, bird watching musts in the first 3 months of the year, under the sea is the best place to be early this year. Find out why, where, and how. Costa Rica's blossom season, a hidden gem that will knock your socks off. How to be an active participant as a traveler instead of just an observer. And how to reduce the stress from your must-see checklist and actually enjoy every bit of your journey, no matter how many items you get to tick off. I met Charlie by going during Easter week last year to a small group adventure into the heartland of Costa Rica's biodiversity in Corcovado National Park. Not only was I amazed by his mastery, but also it's not every day that you meet tourism guides that are actually biologists and can pretty much answer all of your questions with knowledge and so much love towards our country and Mother Earth. Let's take it away. You're in for a treat. I never really thought of myself as one inclined towards sustainability. I thought it was something that you had almost to be born with. Like my best friend Luciana, who since I recall wanted to be and now is an environmental lawyer. And she's been vegan for like 70% of her life. Me, on the other hand, I'm not. I eat animal protein and my profession is not related to environmental issues. I was in an important tourism conference last year and the trending topic was sustainability. My professional context is in the rental car business, and all solutions pointed out in this conference was to offer electrical vehicles. Not only are electrical vehicles in Costa Rica, my home country, extremely expensive, but also it's not so easy for our company to say, yeah, sure, let's buy 20. So the question arises, without large spending budgets, we can't be sustainable? And so I decided to start this voyage with Travel Rooted, a podcast where I invite other professionals to learn from them about traveling, growing our tourism businesses, and sustainable innovation from a conscious perspective so that we can learn together what it really means to be an advocate for planet Earth in ways that we can make a positive impact within our reach. Come with me. I don't know much about these subjects either, but we can discover this green world together. Charlie, thank you for joining me here on this podcast. And I just wanted to give you the opportunity to tell us who Oropopo is and how it came about.
Thank you, Pia. Well, Oropopo is a very beautiful experiment because I'm a graduated student from biology at the University of Costa Rica, and ironically, the country we come from, Costa Rica, uh, even though it has more than 50% of the country is protected area, and we have so many biodiversity. Biology is a field where most of the people who graduate from biology end up unemployed. And that's very, very ironic because you would think that there's a lot of job in such a green country for people who specialize in studying life, right? Well, it's not the case. So I was one of those numbers. When I finished my studies, basically I had done a lot of job at Amazon, call centers, and lots of things not related to biology. But I had a friend who was starting this company. He named the company Oropopo, and he was starting to work with tourism in Costa Rica because he thought that maybe us biologists could add a lot of value to the tourism industry. So he had this idea of being a Costa Rican based tour operator run by biologists to give employment to other colleagues and students and people who were majoring in biology but had still not found a job and would like to share a little bit of what we know to people. So that's how Oropopo started. It was an experiment to see if biology students and biology graduates could fit in the travel and tourism industry. We've been on this for 8 years now. Well, we turned 8 years old this 2024. And I can tell you, with a pandemic in between, there have been lots of lessons learned, and I think it was one of the best things that has happened to my life, being able to participate in the travel industry.
I met you 1 year ago, I think it was, during Easter, because me and my brother joined you for the Drake, at the Corcovado expedition. And I remember that you said something that I thought was very beautiful. And it was how you were incentivizing the Costa Ricans to also see the country and to experience things that normally would be maybe out of budget, for some, and tourists or travelers can afford it because they are on a traveling budget, I guess. But locals don't venture out as much, and I thought that was very beautiful.
Well, yes, that's also one of the things that make us country, I don't know, interesting, let's say, because um, we receive a lot of travelers from all over the world looking, or who are searching for these nature jewels, nature treasures that we have, right? So that also makes that the country is a little bit expensive, and traveling around the country is not as budget friendly as you would think, right? Especially going to national parks, which are so far away from the cities in Costa Rica, like Corcovado National Park. So one of the ideas that Oropopo has is that, okay, we work with foreigners, we work with travelers from all over the world, and and we try to provide an excellent service to them. We are not a very expensive tour operator, but to local ones, to residents, to Costa Ricans, we try not to make profit from them. Actually, we just want to let Costa Ricans know what Costa Rica has to offer by the hand of Costa Rican biologists, by the hand of Costa Rican experts. It's something that it's not so common to be found here. So I think that that's one of like the main values of Oropopo as a company, that we want to share with our people, and we want to make these places available for our people. Right now, actually, it's Easter is coming in a couple of months, and we're doing the same campaign as last year. The same campaign that you went on with us, we're having it again, and still that it means that we're gonna be able to show to at least 50 new Costa Ricans. So we're very very glad about that.
That's amazing. And like, it was shocking to hear that I think it was 1% of Costa Ricans that have visited Corcovado in total.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to get these actual numbers because they belong to the SINAC, the National Park Management System, and they're kind of obscure. But if you go to ACOSA, which is the regional management to Corcovado National Park, that's the number that they give you. That only 1% of Costa Ricans have actually been there in this park. So yeah, it's ridiculous. It's a very low percentage.
It is crazy. I love how you integrate conservation, nature, and pretty much environmental education into tourism, which is, I believe, one of the things that we in Costa Rica we need the most. How has this been? Can you talk a little bit more about how you see conscious tourism? Because when we were talking about making this recording, I remember we were kind of dabbling into how to call it, like responsible tourism, or I can't green tourism. I can't remember what other words. And then you said conscious tourism, and I loved that kind of concept. Could you talk about how you see it?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think first of all, I think that traveling is always a window of opportunity to reflect on on your experience as a human being, on your impact, on your relationship with others, on your relationship with nature. So travel opens up that opportunities to us. So how can you be like a conscious traveler? Because a lot of people say, hey, responsible traveling, right? As you said, green traveling. But what does this mean? I think that the most important part of it is being mindful, being conscious that traveling will always have an impact. And that impact can be as positive or as negative or as neutral as you want it to be. So you got to first understand what that impact means, the places that you're going to visit. One of the main impacts is transportation, for example. Most of us don't even stop to think about the impact that me, Costa Rican, moving, for example, to Europe or to the USA or to Asia means, right? So thinking about this would allow me to make a best decision in which airline to buy tickets from, if there's any compensation. And now that I'm in my final destination, then how will I move around there? For example, will I use a 4x4 uh, Hummer truck, right, by moving around because the roads are all gravel? Or will I rent an electric vehicle, for example? Or will I rent one of the new models? I don't know. So thinking about this stuff is always important as a conscious traveler. There are places that you can go by bike in Costa Rica, renting a bike, for example. Um, so transportation is one of the main things. Another
I
thing
actually
that
wanted to add a little bit here because part of Costa Travel Group, as you know, is actually Costa Rent a Car. And our biggest market has always been the European market. And we have always seen such a difference between the European and the North American market because the European market tends to come for a longer amounts of days. It's obvious, right? Because they're traveling like huge amount, like it's a long destination and they're going to come to Costa Rica. They're not going to come for 5 days, right? They're going to come for at least 2 weeks. And then the North American market varies a lot, and it could be from one weekend to 8 days. But now that I've been living a lot in Europe, and especially in Germany, I can actually, it is not part of their DNA how they think about travel. They think, all right, I'm going to travel to Costa Rica, for example. I'm going to go there for 2 or 3 weeks. I'm going to use up all of my vacation days, but they actually do consider how many more travels they're going to make throughout the year because they already did like a long haul one. Now they have to think about the environment in this way and maybe they take more trains, for example, and don't take as much flights for the rest of the year. And I think on the Western world, we still don't have that kind of consciousness as integrated in our system. The North American market, for example, comes to Costa Rica twice, 3 times, 4 times. Maybe they come 3 times a year. They have a house there, etc. It's just like such a different viewpoint of how to travel.
Yeah, what you mentioned is a key point because it's quality over quantity, right? If you know that traveling has such a huge impact, especially transportation, actually you would like to travel less. So when you're gonna travel, you would like to have a make the best out of it, right? So planning where you want to go, making a very nice itinerary where you don't have to do redundant traveling, for example, between one place to the other. And yeah, I think limiting to one over the seas travel per year, for example, that's also one of the ways of being conscious about it. Not doing it like every 2 or 3 months, even if you have the possibility, right? The economic possibility of doing it.
And also finding ways to compensate. Now more than ever, airlines are offering their compensation certificates. I recently flew with Iberia, and I think it was like $14 or something to compensate. We at the rent a car, we also have an environmental fee. It's optional, but there's like so many little ways that you can start compensating your travels and give back or to make sure that that money is being used in some sort of helpful way to the environment.
Yeah, that's also part of being a conscious traveler, and as a consumer, getting the, you know, working with the companies or traveling with the companies that are doing their best efforts to compensate, or they have their social responsibility programs that you know that they are going to really put the money back in the communities. All of those things are part of it.
Remember I told you that my best friend, Luciana, knew she wanted to be an environmental lawyer since she was like 7 years old. Me, well, I wanted to be one of those artists that paint in the plazas in Paris, drawing landscapes. That was my one and only wish. When I was 3 years old, my father acquired a local rental car company. The year was 1990, and tourism wasn't a big industry in Costa Rica back then. The fleet was just around 10 cars when he started. As I grew up, I actually despised it. Whenever I had to visit his work, I would stay in my car and think to myself, I would never work here. Fast forward a few years, and after a professional lump in my career, my father told me, "Are you sure you don't want to come to work with me at the rental car? I could really use your help and have a feeling you'd love it." At that moment, I was already somewhere around 25 years old, and my dad had managed to grow the local rental-car brand and buy an international franchise. I was really at a loss as to what to do with my life. Clearly, the whole starving artist in Paris wasn't a great idea after all. Honestly, my father just lured me in by saying it required travel. And with that, I was all in. It was hard at first, I won't lie. The employees back then used to hold grudges against me because I was the owner's daughter, of course. However, my dad made sure I worked myself up, so I started working as a regular hire in the marketing department and stayed there for years, as it should be. And fast track that to 11 years later, and now we're a father-daughter owned business. And since 2020, we sold the international franchise and became a local rent-a-car again, now called Costa Rentacar. Back to how it all started, except that now I love working alongside my papa. We have a wonderful relationship and it has only strengthened our father-daughter bond. I grew as a human being, as a woman, and as a professional here. And the more I've worked here, the more passion and drive that I have for the tourism industry, and the love for my beautiful country grows endlessly. I cannot tell you how rewarding it is every time we hear our travelers tell us this has been the most magical journey we've ever been on. Costa Rica really is paradise, and you're so lucky to live here. The thing is, I hate the reputation that rent-a-cars have gotten worldwide, but especially in Costa Rica, because the core of it is not really our fault, but the many third parties that are involved trying to rent travelers a car with huge competition worldwide and dropping the market to literally $1 a day prices and forcing insurances down their throats with little to no small print on what they're including, which we all know this is only a disaster waiting to happen. No business in the right mind would ever rent a car for $1 a day and stay afloat. So if you rent from us, you'll get a no hidden fees policies. We want to co-pilot your unique Pura Vida experience. Actually, we also offer a no credit card deposit option, so you don't get a big block on your card because we know you'll need it for your trip. We also have invested in 11 acres of land reforestation, and in the past 3 years invested on a project that has grown 4,800 trees, helping to maintain Costa Rica's biodiversity and protecting our ecosystem. We have an optional environmental fee, which you can support too, to help us continue our efforts into mitigating our carbon footprint and helping our country greener. So, if renting a car seems like the best option for you, of course I'll give you a great discount, and you can contact us directly to reservations@costacar.cr. Mention this podcast and I'll make sure to give you a great discount so we can get you started on your amazing road trip in our little piece of paradise. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah, in the end, I guess it's just like how you can do the best that you can do with that impact that you're making, right? And like all of these little things that you can add up, and then in the end, make a bigger impact.
Yeah, and now, sorry to interrupt you, but now that you mentioned this, an idea came to my mind, and it's that some people think that travel always has to be pleasure and always have to be comfortable and it always has to be fun and laughs, right? And that is limiting the opportunities that travel has for us, right? Because when people come to Costa Rica and they come with Oropopo, we mention a lot of things that are uncomfortable. We mentioned that we are the sixth mass extinction that in the planet Earth's history, and it's caused by human beings. We mentioned that the planet is warming up, and if we don't do something, well, we will. Now, even if we do something, we will have a lot of trouble in the coming year. So listening to those things definitely is not nice. Definitely is not comfortable, but travel doesn't need to be that way all the time, right? We will have very beautiful moments and we will probably see wonderful birds and we'll learn about a flora and we'll learn about mushrooms and a lot of things that Costa Rica has to offer. But also we got to reflect on the things that we're doing wrong as a species and that we can do better. So I think that's also part of being a conscious traveler, accepting that there is this side, right, of the world that we cannot turn our heads away from. We have to look at it in the eyes.
Absolutely. Well, they say that growth happens outside of your comfort zone, right?
Mm.
And a lot of with our project with Cool, one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of projects are born actually out of someone that traveled somewhere and saw something that impacted them and then went home and did something about it. So actually it gives you that opportunity, which I know we will talk about this later, but to learn and then ask yourself what you can do with that learning.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we talk about transport and how you can be a more conscious traveler when you're with transport. How about when we arrive at a destination?
Well, definitely, I love Costa Rica because apart from it having such a wonderful nature, now you can have such interesting places to stay at if you actually look, right, because there are a lot of homestays, there are lots of eco lodges that are bio designed, they're built with bamboo or they are built with adobe, right, which is like a mix of mud and grass. So if you do a little bit of research, you will see that going to the big hotel chains, it's not the only way to travel anymore, right? You can find lots of lodging in the country that are in the rural side, that they belong to local families, that they are small scale. Um, Probably they're gonna be sourcing the food from their neighbors, for example, or from people that they know. So making a little bit of the research about this also will help us, as you mentioned before. If we're gonna have an impact, let's make the best of it, right? So we're gonna leave our money in the communities, in the families that actually need it, not in larger chains that that they already have their successful business model and they don't need you really, right? And they also have a larger impact than a small scale hotel or homes. And in Costa Rica, the government has and the Ministry of Tourism has supported this idea of rural community tourism. So now you can find on the websites, for example, different places that are associated with the Ministry of Tourism, and they even have a database and a catalog online of different places that you can visit. Almost everywhere in the country, um, you will find these eco lodges or small scale homestays.
I kind of want to say pretty much everywhere. I
Yeah,
think it's
pretty much everywhere.
much more common than regular hotels.
Yeah.
And what I also love about this homestays is that they are also getting involved in certifications and they're getting involved in um, compensation, for example, being carbon neutral or having the blue flag. I see more and more, and I'm loving seeing this more and more, like tiny families that maybe have like a cottage or two, and how they make it a priority because they understand the importance of it and they understand the impact, and they're also understanding quite savvily the demand that there is for it. And they're getting much more involved with this type of certifications.
Yeah, I believe it's wonderful how that's the magic of tourism, right? That when people actually understand that by preserving nature, they are actually making profit and they are actually uh, probably preserving nature more, right? Then that's like the magic formula because, as you mentioned, it's a small family, probably 6 to 7 people. They have two cottages, but they are actually making efforts to be mindful of the water waste, for example, or be mindful of composting their organic residues, and they are mindful of probably providing you with sun-powered heaters for your water, right? So when you take a hot shower, so all of these things are happening at small-scale homestays, right? So people are actually very conscious of the things that they could do to lower their environmental impact, as you mentioned. And in Costa Rica, we have those certifications, the ones that you also mentioned, the blue flag. I think Costa Rica is the only country I know that has a blue flag certification that basically anyone can apply to get it for good environmental practices. And then we also have a more um, tourist industry related one, which is the CST, right? And also a lot of these small scale businesses, they hold the CST, the certification for sustainable tourism.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to chime in also here with the lodging. And this is something that I learned from my mom and from my younger brother because they're both architects. And the harmony that, and we're talking more about going into hotels or like bigger chains or like boutique luxury that's also very in kind of in vogue right now, right? Um, and a very important aspect to consider is how is this building being in harmony with its environment? Is it competing with the environment? Is it, and maybe you have a better way of explaining this than me, but when it has too much of a contrast with the environment, it can affect its wildlife around because they can get confused, right? Like they can start seeing that there's kind of like an invader in their natural habitat.
Well, this is something quite beautiful because when you find a place that is in harmony with its environment, you feel it. Maybe you don't know exactly what's going on there, but you feel it. You feel like you're part of the forest, or you're part of the mangrove, or you're part of or you are actually mixing with the place, right? But when something is off, you feel like it's actually disturbing the environment. So the most common thing is the materials, the construction materials, right? That's one of the first things that I mentioned. People that use wood or adobe, this is gonna blend in with the natural environment, but also the way it's designed, the way the air flows, the way that you can actually make better use of the viewpoints of the place that you're at, of the highs and lows in the terrain, of the way that of the soundscape, as we call it. For example, if you have a very beautiful pond at night and you got a lot of frogs, you don't want to build the bar next to it, right, where you know it's going to be loud. You want to have something very quiet around it, and actually appreciate this soundscape of the frogs at night. So these kind of things are part of the design process of a nice lodge. And in Costa Rica we have lots of beautiful examples of places that are in great harmony with their natural um, surroundings.
So, another small interlude from me, Pia. As years have gone by and I've kept falling in love with the tourism industry and Costa Rica, I decided to launch a project that will help you, as a traveler, avoid falling into a tourist trap and find a Costa Rica that nourishes you inside out through local, authentic, and mostly sustainable off-the-beaten-path experience. It's called Costa Rica Cool Rides. I have traveled Costa Rica curating experiences, restaurants, lodging, and even tourist guides so that you can have the real opinion of of both a local and a traveler, such as myself, with no monetary interest to advertise a specific party because I'm not a travel agency, nor do I take commissions for my recommendations. My opinions and my audiovisual content, I take a lot of photos and videos, are made by myself, mostly with my phone, so that you can get an authentic grasp on what to expect and for whom every experience and destination I think is best suited for. Nothing is overproduced nor edited to make it look better than what it actually is. The best part is that for those experiences that I really like, I ask the owners to provide a discount for our cool guide travelers, whom I like to call cool riders, to create a win-win for you as a traveler and to incentivize you to help a business owner who's doing something great grow. Naturally, I like to highlight those that are mostly local, promoting sustainable practices and/or our small business owners. You can find everything through my website, CostaRicaCoolRides.com, alongside amazing free content to help you plan your most nourishing journey in Costa Rica. Now, back to the episode.
I want to get into a subject that I love, that is food. And this is also something that I've noticed here. And I think, I believe I've noticed it here more in Europe because they use much more of what's in season. And I know in Costa Rica, we are starting to import more food, and you can find pretty much everything in the supermarket, whether it's in season or off season. And we are kind of getting a little bit deviated on that mindset. So as a conscious traveler, how can we talk about food? And now that we're in this podcast talking specifically about January, February, and March, the first 3 months of the year, what can we expect to see, and what should we kind of think about buying or consuming more?
That's a great question, and I love that as well because in Costa Rica we have these little farmers markets, right? Every Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, depending where you are in the country. And this is the best place to find seasonal food, right? And the first months we have one of my favorites because they're so watery and they are so refreshing with the heat and that you get right in the first months of the year, which is watermelon. It's at season in Costa Rica. Melons are in season. Passion flowers like granadilla and maracuya. This These are one of the things that you can find here in the farmers market. But the best way to know is just to ask, and that's also the best way of getting around everywhere. Like asking the locals what is in season right now, and also asking the hotels and restaurants that you're staying, like what do you have in season. This applies, for example, if you're going to the seaside and you're going to a restaurant that serves seafood, and they will have different fish depending on the time of the year. Like it's different if you ask for tuna because you know that you like tuna, right? Than if you ask for the catch of the day. What did they get today, right? It probably wasn't tuna. Probably it was something like mahi mahi or a snapper or something like that, right? So actually asking what do you have right now, what's abundant right now, is one of the best ways of also being a conscious consumer, because probably that required the less effort to arrive there, because all nature was already conspiring to produce a lot of that fruit or a lot of that fish that time of the year. So it's also opening up to what is available right now. And I think as humans, we've reached this point in history when we have so much things available all of the time that we forgot to live by the cycles of nature, right? Like in nature, we don't have strawberries all year long. In nature, we don't have mangoes all year long. We gotta wait for it, right? So following those natural cycles and adapting to those natural cycles also makes you a more conscious traveler, but also a more conscious human being.
I love that you mentioned the farmers market because whenever I travel, one of the things that I always do, doesn't matter where I go, is try to go to a local farmer market just because I love food and I love the experience. But it's actually it's a travel experience, right? It's even in Costa Rica. Like, I don't know about you, you probably do, but I have my favorite markets that I love to go to, and there most of them are on Saturday. And now more and more that people are staying in Airbnbs, and they're staying in like even apartments that are not in Airbnb but in platforms such as Booking, etc. And they're cooking more. Going into a farmer's market is the best way that you can see what's in season, and also supporting a local producer, right? A local family that it's pretty much farm to market.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. As you say, actually visiting the farmer market is one of the best travel experiences that you can have because of the colors and the aromas of ripe fruit and the textures of all the things that you're gonna see there. So it's a full senses experience, and I had never put that into words. The things that you said about people cooking more because they are staying more at places that have kitchens, and that's wonderful, right? Because then you get to choose, and then you get to prepare whatever you want. So my favorite farmers market is Guadalupe's.
Well, this one,
Guadalupe's farmers market because
I think it
yeah,
also
you asked.
depends. Yeah, because if you're a traveler and you're staying in San Jose, I like one night I always tell people to go to the Feria Verde de Aranjuez. Not as much as to buy the products, but like to eat
Yeah.
because like the food that they have there, it's like the breakfast is absolutely amazing and the variety.
Mhm.
But yeah, my family lives in Escazú, so that I would go to the Escazú one, and they have. As a traveler, I hope that you try this. It's a pupusa for breakfast. Which they almost always have at the markets, right? It's like a
Mhm.
filled tortilla with whatever you want it, like cheese or beans or meat, etc. Or just like a tortilla liñada, like a thick tortilla that they make it like right there. It's glorious.
Yeah.
And something more to add, because we're talking about January, February, and March. I think it's super important. Is the chiverre. This is something that only happens around Easter week. It's kind of like a cultural tradition. Firstly, because the fruit only grows around that season, right? And then they make so much out of it. They make sweets, like the empanadas de chiverre or just the chiverre. If you're really lucky, you can find someone that has made like a dulce de chiverre, which is kind of like a jam-like consistency, but they also make pan casero, like fresh homemade bread, and having that is like
Hmm.
heaven, pretty much.
Yeah, for probably people who will have trouble understanding chiverre, it's like a huge pumpkin.
Yeah.
It's really, really massive, right? And it can be like 20, 30 kilos. A large chiverre can be like a small kid, right? They're massive. And yeah, it's so delicious, and it's only found on during the Easter season. And it's time consuming also to cook it and to prepare it. So it's something that very traditional grandmas, right, and people who from past generations, they have their recipes and then pass it over to their sons and their grandsons. So it's also a very like cultural manifestation. So it's really nice.
Yeah, I think when travelers are when they go to Costa Rica, they will see that when they're driving or when they're whichever transport that they choose, on the side of the streets, there's always going to be like small vendors selling something. It's mostly things that are on season, right? And if you're going on these 3 months, you are definitely around March, you're going to find vendors selling something around Chivere. So make sure that you stop and you buy, because it's different. It's a very cultural experience, I guess.
I also remember that you like green mango, right? It's also
Oh,
in the
yeah,
People are not used to eating green mango usually.
You know what? I was just thinking this morning. I don't think I've ever seen. Well, I haven't been to Asia, so I don't know. Probably in Asia they do have it, but I've never seen like in Europe or Northern America a mango cele, what we call, which is like this tiny green mango that you don't wait for it to go sweet. It's like a sour thing that you eat with salt or with lemon and salt.
Mhm.
Oh, that's
Yeah, and it's also common by the roads because I remember that when you said that these little vendors right next to the road, it's also common to find this mango sele in a cup with salt and lemon. Some they use tahine or a chili sauce on top sometimes, right? As well. Um, yeah, very
it's a
nice.
it's a good season for fruits. That and the jocote season, but this is not now. All right. So let's talk a little bit about touristic experiences. About how to be a conscious traveler, because I think this is really important, right? It's like how to choose a conscious tourist experience, and also how to be aware of good practices that
Mhm.
your tour operator or your guide is having or not having.
Yeah, definitely. Well, in Costa Rica, obviously, because tourism is such a major driver of economy, you will find good providers and good tourist experiences and very bad ones, right? So, how do you know which one to take? I would say I won't go to the common ground, which is going to TripAdvisor and the reviews, things like that. If we want to go deeper because we're going talking about conscious travelers, so we try to reflect on things a little bit more. So
Right.
first of all, I would say about the scale. Is it small, medium, or large scale? If you see a tourist experience where they're gonna cram 40 people in a bus and they're gonna go to the hanging bridges. Let's say hanging bridges is a common destination in Arenal or Monteverde, and you're gonna go in an excursion with 40 people, and they give you an itinerary in which you're gonna be at the hanging bridges for 1 or 2 hours because the drive is so far away, right? So you're only gonna be able to arrive, be on there for 1 or 2 hours, and then come back to your hotel. I would say that's not a great tourist experience. Firstly, because of the scale, and also because of the quality of time that you're going to spend in the place that you're going to be at. So, my recommendation would be looking for more private experiences, more small or medium scale, where you have a group no larger than 10 people, for example, in a small bus, where when you look at the itinerary and you get to spend enough time at each place to really feel it, to really get in touch with nature, to really understand the surroundings of the place that you're going to visit. So that's
And
one of the.
sorry
Yep.
to interrupt, but now that you mentioned about this large scale groups, sound pollution is super important, specifically talking about Costa Rica, right? Because we're talking about a country that it's pretty much are just visiting nature. And part of the experience is listening to nature and not disturbing it, right? Which is like a fine balance. But if you're in a huge group, even like more than 20 people, it's impossible that there's not going to be noise. Like, it's impossible that people are not going to be talking with each other. And it's just going to be like the biggest sound pollution and, in a way, ruin the experience, not only for the environment, but also for oneself, because you don't really get to, involve yourself or like submerge yourself in nature.
Yeah, exactly. You're totally right. Like imagine 40 people walking at the same time on the forest with only one or two guides, right? So it's scale for me would be one of the first things that people should ask. What's gonna be the size of the group that you're gonna be joining? Then another important thing to look for is if they have any certifications, if the travel agency that you're gonna go with or the tour operator has any certifications. As we mentioned before, in Costa Rica we have the CST, we have the Blue Flag, but also now companies can also look for international certification like the B, B Corps, or like fair trade, for example, or those are other things that you should look for more than only the reviews in TripAdvisor, because usually companies that have a lot of reviews, for example, thousands of reviews, is because they are very, very cheap. But this doesn't mean that they can have the best practices. Probably they are very, very cheap because they don't pay a lot to their staff, for example, or they don't leave a lot of money in the community. So to 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 link this to the next thing that you should be looking at is, how is this company affecting the places that they're going to visit? Do you know that in the itinerary you're gonna have lunch at a local solita, at a local restaurant, or they're gonna have lunch maybe at a hotel, or they're gonna have lunch maybe at a large food chain? So how does this experience integrates with the things that we've said before, right? With local food, with small scale lodge, with family owned restaurants. So is this company and this touristic activity really supporting, really adding value to the whole chain of providers? And and then right when you are at the experience, the guiding is also another thing to pay a lot of attention to, because there can be good guides, regular guides, and bad guides. And as a consumer, we have the power to say, hey, I like this, or I don't like this. And I've seen lots of things in Costa Rica with guides. I've seen people who, for example, it's very common to use playback when they are looking for birds. I don't know if you've seen this. That they say, a bird flew. Let's say a hawk, right? It was so fast that people didn't see the hawk, but the hawk is between. It's at a canopy at the trees. So they take out their phone and they play a sound, a recorded sound of the hawk. Well, that creates a stress on the hawk, and the hawk starts moving so that people can see it, right? So these kind of practices are common but are not great, are not ideal. And so keep an eye for that. If the guide, for example, is eating a banana and then throws the banana skin right next to the trail, well, it's organic, it will decompose, but it also has an impact on the rainforest, and it will bring animals in. It's an indirect way of feeding the animals. So this kind of behavior is also something that you should be looking, because good companies train their guides on ethic practices, right? On not feeding the animals, not allowing tourists, not allowing travelers to get so close to animals, right? Now it's common that everyone wants to see the sloth, everyone wants to hug the sloth, take a selfie with the sloth. So these kind of practices are not very ethical, are not. So companies that promote these kind of practices and they say, hey, over here with us, you can take your selfie with your sloth, or you will be able to pet a baby sloth. Well, that's definitely not ethical, and those kind of things, that the kind of interactions with wildlife are the kind of interaction that we want to completely ban from Costa Rican tourism. And we want the travelers understand that this is not the way that they should be interacting with wildlife.
And illegal too.
And illegal, correct.
I actually have an anecdote which would bring us to the next topic perfectly, which was when we were in Corcovado with you guys and our guide, because we were in two separate groups. I think you were with the other group, and Paulo was the guide for us. And we were watching a boa snake, I think it was. It was like inside a tree trunk. And we were kind of taking turns because we had to kind of get into like a little passageway. And I was a little bit behind. And we had already been instructed on what to do if we see certain animals, right? And one of the animals that we were obviously all very eager to see was a danta. And Paulo had already explained to us, if you see it, and this is what you have to do, etc., etc. And I was with my brother, and Paulo was watching the boa with a couple, and then suddenly my brother goes, and I turn around, and the danta is coming with the tapir is coming with a little baby, but she was running. Like she was clearly scared. And as soon as Paulo noticed, he was like, don't move, stay quiet, don't move. Like he kept repeating. So we were just like frozen, right? Because she was coming straight at us. And, you know, this was the first time that I had ever seen a tapir, and you would never imagine the scale of the animal, right? It's huge. And but the point of this was that she was running away from something, and Paulo didn't let us move, and he just let the tapir leave. And then he told us this was probably because another guide inside the national park scared her. Probably they chased after her when they saw her to take pictures or whatnot, but she was clearly scared, and we could sense it, we could see it, how she was running away. And that was obviously creating such a bad impact on her environment, on her baby, etc. Right?
Yeah, this is something that most people don't realize, but yeah, animals actually don't want us to harass them, right? Being so close, following them up, taking pictures with flash, like these kind of things they are not used to, right? And so, as Paulo described, the best way that you should interact with nature is in silence, not making like very fast movements, because most of the animals will be scared by us, right? We are strangers at their ecosystem. And how would you feel if someone's, as a human, how would you feel if someone's running after you with a camera taking pictures of you, right?
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't feel nice. So yeah, that's unfortunately common, right? People
Yeah.
who make everything to get a picture or to get close to an animal, and those are the things that, as a traveler, you should be also wary, right? And if you find or if you see any of these behaviors, you should let the company know,
Yeah.
definitely, so that
Yeah.
they can take measures, and to see that the clients and the travelers will not allow it to happen anymore.
True. And going into, because we already jumped into this other topic, which is how to spot wildlife, which is pretty much one of the biggest things that travelers come to Costa Rica to do. How they can be, how can they approach it in a much more conscious way? And as you said, manage their expectations. Obviously, expectations are going to be high. Obviously, they want to see the sloths and the monkeys and the, you know, and all of it. But how can we approach this in a much more conscious way?
Well, that's very nice, because it allows us to make an analogy to food, right? As the nature is is cyclic, also wildlife is that way. Like, we don't see whales all year round, or we don't see, I don't know, birds all year round. They have their seasons. So we can set our expectations based on the seasons that we're going to visit the country. Because I think that the way most people see Costa Rica is like, you step out of the plane and then you arrive to the rainforest, right? And then
Yeah.
everything will just hover around your head,
It's kind of, they
monkeys and
think that
birds.
maybe they step out of the train and like the sloth and the monkey are going to greet them like outside of the plane, like, hi, welcome to Costa Rica.
Exactly. And Costa Rica
Yeah.
is very diverse, a lot of types of forests, a lot of ecosystem, two slopes like the Caribbean and the Pacific, and lakes and mangroves. So definitely we got to set our expectations. But this is a very magical country, and lots of things happen all year round. So when people ask me when is the best time to visit Costa Rica, I always say anytime. Anytime. There's always something going on. But on the first times of the year, um, one of the most, I would say, interesting phenomena and massive phenomena that we got going on is the bird migration. You know, because the north hemisphere is going through the winter, so a lot of the birds are flying long distances from the North Hemisphere to places like Costa Rica, which is sunny and warm, and there are a lot of food resources to mate, to reproduce. So we got this, for example, the warblers, the group of the warblers, tiny birds, which are usually not very colorful or kind of plain, kind of dull when they are non-breeding. But when they come here and start breeding, they change, they mold their feathers, and they have all these bright, beautiful colors. And this is the best time of the year to see the migratory birds, orioles, warblers, ducks, all these birds that make these huge migrations during the North winter. So, yeah, the first 3 months of the year are great for bird watching. And in the wetlands, we will have massive duck migrations. And one of the most beautiful and amazing species that we have in Costa Rica, which not a lot of people know about, it's the jabiru. Jabiru is like um, like a stork. It will say like it has the shape of a stork, and it's the actually the largest bird that we have in the country. And it when it stands, it can be like 1 meter and a half, like 5 feet tall. It's a very very tall bird,
Wow.
and you can find this during the first months of the year in the wetlands of Caño Verde or Palo Verde, which are one of the largest wetlands in the country. And it's a magical spectacle. It's a nature show to see this bird. and and also one of the most I almost forgot about one of the most searched upon birds are the macaws, the scarlet macaws, which actually during the first months of the year is their mating season. So it's a good time to see the parents flying with their youngs. So it's very very
Mm.
three birds flying together in the air, like very scarlet and red birds, and making a lot of noise. It's very very
It's
nice.
impossible to miss them because they make so much noise.
Yeah, they make so much noise, and they are so showy and beautiful. So during in all the Pacific coast, there you will definitely see scarlet macaws if you come in the January, February, March. And if you go instead to the highlands, because maybe you want to look for cooler weather, right? Cooler temperatures, then it's time to see the quetzal, the resplendent quetzal, right? Especially in places like San Gerardo de Dota or the Los Quetzales National Park, because this bird is um, is usually seen at a very specific type of tree, the aguacatillo. It's related to the avocado family. It's a wild avocado, smaller than the avocado that we eat, and the bird is always looking for this type of fruit. So this is the time of the year when there is more abundant this fruit in the highlands. So it's definitely a good time, March and April, to see the quetzal. But always true. All it starts in December. So December, January, February, March are good months to see the quetzal in the highlands of the country.
I think for bird watchers, the quetzal is probably like a on the top of the text for
Yeah,
sure.
and even because I've had all types of people coming here. People who were not into nature, people who are they like plants or they like frogs or they like snakes, people who come to see the stars. But no matter your interest, seeing a quetzal, it's always this unforgettable experience. It's such a wonderful
So,
bird.
yeah. And I think one of the things, at least I remember with the first time that I saw one, is that I did not realize how big they actually get to be. I kind of always like, you always see them in the picture, and I kind of always picture like something like this, but like they can be huge.
Hmm. They
Yeah,
can be huge,
it's beautiful.
and
Um,
there's a lot of you know folk and and history, pre-Columbian history related to this bird. So even if you're a historian, even if you're into archaeology, you will find the quetzal interesting. So there's a lot to
mhm.
this bird that can be enjoyed.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I've never considered myself like a bird watcher or like to have a particular interest in bird watching But whenever I'm in an experience, which is pretty much in Costa Rica everywhere, right? In any nature involved experience, and the guide is talking about birds and this bird, and then you see that one, it's just like so captivating and it's so entertaining. Like you would never imagine how entertaining it is once you're there, and how exciting it is, like to find all of these little birds that you didn't know about, and learning about, they make a sound, and then you hear it, and then you hear it maybe again 5 minutes later, and then you're able to recognize it. It's just like it's an adventure for sure.
Yeah, everyone should give it a chance, even if they don't
Yeah.
consider themselves bird watchers. Give it
Yeah.
a chance because you might surprise yourself.
True. True. All right, so we've talked about birds, and now how about like underwater? What's the what if this season can give to us on the ocean?
Well, it's wonderful because that it's just like the saying, the calm before the storm, or after, sorry, the calm after the storm, right? Because we've just gone through our most rainy months, which September, October, November. So in December and December, January, February, and March are the transition months to the dry season. So now the waters of the ocean are are cleaner because the rivers are not bringing that amounts of dirt and sediments that they would bring during the rainy season. And there's also these very special types of winds that come from the east to the west of the country, right? So the water is perfect. The water is just so clear for snorkeling, for scuba diving, even for people who like sport fishing. Um, so these are the best months for people who are enthusiasts of water sports, especially in the Pacific coast, all over the Pacific coast. There are some better places than others to do like these activities. Usually bays, which Costa Rica has hundreds of different bays, which very low current and low, and where the water is calm. Usually these are nesting sites for whales, for dolphins, for rays. So the biodiversity there at this base, it's wonderful, and there are plenty of options to visit. Right? All over the coast, you will find operators, usually small operators, people who have their own boats will take you there. They have their own snorkeling or scuba gear um, to take you there. So it's one of the things that I would say it's a must if you're coming to Costa Rica in the first months of the year to do some underwater activities.
For sure, for sure. And actually, people think that snorkeling is like not that big of a deal, and like you would only see things when you're like diving. But I was in Isla del Caño not so long ago, and I do have a diver's license, but that time I was only snorkeling, and I saw pretty much everything. Like everything that the divers saw, we saw it also. Like even the sharks. So don't get, and this is more for like the travelers, like don't get onto that mindset of like, oh, snorkeling, it's like such a small deal. It's not. Like you will see a lot, and it's amazing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm. And also, well, we get to see the humpback whale, and I have a story here too on good practices. I remember it was in January, it was late January, and I was in Samara, and I went with a tour operator to see the whales, and it was amazing. There were a lot of them. But I remember that he kept saying, because there were like a couple of travelers inside the same boat that got overly excited, obviously, when they started seeing them. And he kept repeating over and over again, like, keep your arms inside of the boat. Please don't like stick your head out. Give people room. It's very normal to get excited, right? When you're like inside and you're suddenly seeing this huge animal coming about and wanting to go over and taking pictures and stuff. And he kept repeating it so much that people were not listening, obviously, and they kept doing it and then kept doing it. And then he stopped the boat and he said, if you are going to do it one more time, I'm going to turn the boat around and we're going to leave. And for me, that was like complete respect. Like, it was like, wow, okay, so this person really takes it seriously, because I think us as tourists or travelers, we don't really grasp like the risk that we're under ourselves and the environment as well, right? We're just like, oh my god, look at the whales, look at the dolphins, look at the mantas, and whatnot. But I guess we don't realize the extension of it.
Well, kudos to that guy because it takes a lot of courage to standing up against the clients and saying, "Hey, it's not the way you want it to be," right? Because we have this saying that the customer is always right, and it's not true, right? Sometimes you need to step up and say, "Hey, wait a minute, it's not like that," right?
Yeah.
So that was a great example of good practices there,
Yeah.
and we need more people to be able to appreciate that instead of getting angry at a guide, for example.
Correct. And like, I guess like in tourism and especially in Costa Rica in nature related activities, clients are never right because they have no idea. They don't know Costa Rica, right? Like you're a traveler, you're a visitor. Even us as locals, we don't even know. Like it takes a lot of, you're a scientist, like you know about it. The guide will know about it and he will know or she will know what's best and what could be done, what could not be done. Like imagine like the tail of that whale, if you stick your hand out and it just kind of slaps you, probably breaks your arm or like, you're armless. I don't know, but yeah, I guess we don't really grasp the seriousness of events.
Definitely,
But
a lot of accidents happen due to ignorance, right? So
yeah, all right.
we
But
got a
yeah,
little bit derailed, but it's fine.
yeah. So humpback whales, right?
Yeah. So be- before that, we were talking a lot about the Pacific, right? But it's because the Caribbean is a whole different story, right?
True.
So probably we're gonna talk about the Caribbean in other episodes. But in the first months of the year, we got a lot of rain going on in the Caribbean, and we have the dry season in the Pacific. So for underwater sports, the Pacific, right? That will be better because the water is cleaner and it's easier to see stuff, right? So yeah, you were mentioning humpback whales in Samaran, this experience, and it's because also as birds, they migrate, the humpback whales, from the north to the south. So at this time of the year, it's possible to see them at the North Pacific side of the country, right? Because at other months you see them at the South Pacific. So to give us some names, the North Pacific is the Guanacaste province. So all on Guanacaste coast, you can see the whales from January to March, especially at places which are nursery sites for the whales, like Santa Elena Bay. That's very close to the Nicaraguan border. For people who like marine biology and who want to be close to marine wildlife, they definitely have to go to this place, Santa
Definitely.
Elena Bay. You
The
can
ocean
also, sorry?
the ocean there is completely different to all the rest of the ocean in Costa Rica. Like it's actually cold, which you don't really find in Costa Rica, and transparent, and you can see the manta rays like right there. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
and also the jumping movulas, which is something that people confuse them with manta rays, the movulas. But the movulas, they have like their eyes pop out a little bit, like tiny antenna from the head, and they are larger, and they have this behavior that they jump above the surface of the water, and you can see groups of 50 movulas. So this is another phenomena that will be completely breathtaking, right? And it happens there at the Santa Elena during the months of February and first months of the year, actually. And also, we are talking about this right before the nesting of olive Ridley turtles, which is possible to find every month in Guanacaste if you go to the right place, which is Ostional. It's not the month of the year when it's most abundant, but if you're looking for sea turtles, olive ridley can be found all year long in the North Pacific side of the country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then we also have the beginning of the green sea turtle, which is only the beginning, right? But in the Caribbean,
Yeah,
in March, I guess. But it's not the peak season, but it starts, I
it
guess.
starts. Yeah,
Yeah.
so if for example, for people who are going to the Caribbean side, definitely that's something that I would look forward to doing, especially during the months of March, because it's the beginning of the nesting season of the green turtle. And the green turtle has also a lot of history. There's also a lot to be learned about the sea turtle, and it used to be one of the most important, I would say, products for the indigenous cultures of the Caribbean side, because they would eat the green turtle. So it's very interesting. Now it's an endangered species. It's protected by law. Obviously, it's not possible to eat it, but that's one of the things why it's so endangered now. Why it's so magical to be able to actually see it, because the numbers are so low of this population that it's slowly recovering with all of the laws that are protecting them and all of the good practices that the communities are implementing. Obviously, people stopped hunting and eating them, but Tortuguero in the Caribbean is one of the last places of the world which has a stable population of green turtles.
Now that you mentioned the part of eating eggs, it's super important to say that it's illegal, because unfortunately there are people that still do it, right? And they offer it, and if there's demand, they're going to keep doing it. So of course, if someone very sketchily offers you a turtle egg, just say no and say that's illegal, right? Like, as a traveler, I always have like this idea that as a traveler, you get to make the impact, because you're the one that's demanding, like, you're whatever it is that you want to see. And the more the people want to see it, that grows. So if you say no to the right things to say no to, then you can actually make a huge impact in wherever destination you're going to.
Definitely, definitely. That's also the power that we have, right, as travelers, and
Right.
to change things about the culture that might not be the best, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And going back to the wildlife, I know that there's things that people are always looking forward to seeing, like sloths, monkeys, um, toucans, for example. They come to Costa Rica and people, hey, toucans, monkeys, sloths, right? Fortunately, this can be seen all year round. So it doesn't matter if you come from any month from January to December, it's possible to see them, as long as that you know which what the best place to go, and also if you have a good guide. Especially, I would recommend going with a biologist or a naturalist guide that knows how to read the forest, that really knows about the Costa Rican ecosystem. Those are animals that can be seen all year round.
Right. And another aspect that I would love to for you to talk about in this 3 months of the year is that, and actually, I think I want to say like 99% of travelers don't know about this like kind of phenomena. Like, Japan is known for its cherry blossom season, and we kind of have like a similar kind of season happening in Costa Rica with a few trees that we have. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. This is something that has not come to the popular knowledge. So this is a secret, right? As of
Yeah.
today, because in Costa Rica we have the massive blooming season from January to March, even to April, right? And it's when all of the rains, the trees received all of the rains during September, October, November. They were getting enough water, they were getting enough resources. They were like, yeah, this is what I need to thrive. And then a lot of stress, drought, like it's so dry and it's so intense. And this is the moment when they say, hey, maybe I won't make it to the next rainy season, so I gotta reproduce. And the trees start producing huge amounts of flowers to reproduce during these months. And it's so wonderful. I look at the mountains and it's like a painting, right? With yellow patches over there and pink patches and red and orange and all of these colors from these huge trees that are all blooming at the same time. So I think that's something that Costa Rica as a country hasn't realized yet, that is one of the most beautiful times of the year because of that. And that's something that you can appreciate. You don't even have to get out of the city to appreciate that, because even in San Jose at the downtown, you can look at the mountains and you will see poros, which is a type of tree that was associated with coffee plantation, and it has this beautiful orange flower. So anyone coming to the country that has to go from the airport to San Jose during these months will see the roads covered in orange flowers. Then we have the Roble Sabana, which has pink flowers, and it's a wonderful time of the year to to see this type of trees. Jacarandas, which very intense purple flowers. So as you say, if Japan has this cherry blossom tree season and a lot of people visit because of that, we have our own blooming
Yeah, no,
season.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that, as you mentioned, it's not one color. Like the cherry blossoms, they're all pink. In Costa Rica, we have like 4 different colors at blooming at the same time, which is, and they're massive trees too. Like you wouldn't, like when you see a Corteza amarilla and it's full bloom, it's like this huge, huge tree, like all yellow, and it's like wow, it's amazing. And then as the season kind of starts to wind down, they all of the flowers are on the streets. So like the streets is super colorful as well. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's like a carpet, right, of yellow,
Yeah.
pink, blue flowers. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, I guess Costa Rica has not learned to market this
Yeah,
too much, but we can start marketing it.
we
That's
can
fine.
start it. Yeah.
We can start our own blossom campaign.
Mm.
Um, so kind of as a recap, because we've gone through a lot of material here. Obviously, we have talked about what's kind of in season for February, March. I mean, January, February, March. We've talked about food. We've talked about experiences, wildlife, trees, and we've talked a lot about conscious tourism and how to be a conscious traveler, right? And kind of, I just want to strengthen this point because you're coming to Costa Rica, and this is something that you can apply everywhere, wherever it is that you're traveling with. And I loved how you explained this experience and how to become how to kind of make it a spiritual experience, like an observational experiences, how to lower your expectations and just learn to be in the present moment, right? This is something that we have a very hard time to, right? We have this huge checklist. We have all of this wildlife that we want to see, all of these adventures that we want to do. We only have X amounts of time. We've already saved a lot of money and we're going to spend all of that money. So obviously we have a huge expectation of what's going to happen.
Mhm.
But how can we kind of lessen that anxiety and enjoy the moment no matter what happens?
Well, you are actually taking the words out of my mouth, because definitely as a traveler, you would agree with me that the experiences that change the most and which you hold dearest to your heart, which are completely unforgettable, are the ones that were unexpected. So definitely you always go to a new place with expectations, with a checklist. You want to visit this museum, you want to see this bird, you want to do this and that, you want to eat that food. You already know that you want to do those things. But maybe taking the moment to breathe and say, hey, I'm in the rainforest, I came looking for the sloth, but what is the spiritual significance of being here? It's not the sloth. It's not about looking at it. It's not about taking the picture of the sloth. It's about being present in the forest and receiving, for example, what the forest wants to give you. It might be a sound, it might be a texture, it might be a tree with the flowers, right? Learning to observe. That's something that I try to promote a lot in the people who come to tours with Oropopo. We will do our best to give you your checklist. We know it's important to you, but we feel that the thing most valuable is that if you really learn to appreciate nature for what it is, for everything it has to offer, which is not a sloth or a monkey or a macaw. It's a mix of different elements that are all working together to create this very beautiful and perfect environment that we are visiting right now. So everything here, to the smallest moss to the largest tree, has a purpose in this ecosystem. And from the smallest insect, the most beautiful, massive, scared tapir, right? They all have a role. And if we learn to be amazed by that, by the small things, then our expectations don't matter. The experience we will have will be transcendental. It will be spiritual. It will be experience that you will not forget. So I always try to invite people to change their mindset, right? Especially when they come with very strict or very narrow expectations of what they are coming to look for.
Yeah, and one of the things that I love to always say is to understand that wildlife is wild. Like, it is what it is. And you said it before, it actually wants to hide from us. It wants to run away from us. It does not want to greet us. It does not want to be shown. And seeing it is amazing. Of course, it's marvelous. But understanding that we are in its habitat, they're not in ours, and we are kind of invading their home, and they're going to run away from us. So it's very normal to go to a tour experience and not see much, right?
Yeah.
At least not the checklist that we thought we were going to see. Especially, and this is something that I want to add here, you have to hire a guide. Like, if you are not a scientist in some way or another, and if your specialization is not in the tropics, you will not see anything. Like, I've gone to hundreds of places on my own and I do not see anything. I see ants and pretty much that's it. And maybe like a spider here or there, but nothing else. So one of the biggest things is like definitely you need to hire a guide, and if you can make it audible, of course. But
Thank you.
but yeah, wildlife is wild. You do not know what you are going to see or if you're going to see it. So I find it beautiful of having what you offer, of having like that change of mindset into just like enjoying the rainforest, like listening to the rainforest, smelling or the cloud forest, like smelling it or wherever it is that you are, and just kind of being present in that moment and remembering it. I was actually meeting with a client last week, and she's from Venezuela, but she's lived in Miami, I think, most of her life. And she came to Costa Rica not so long ago. And we were talking last week, and she told me, you know what? Whenever I am stressed, whenever I am anxious, or I'm having a bad day, I just close my eyes and I place myself in Costa Rica. And I asked her, like, but like anything specifically because I helped her make like the whole trip and I advised her on where to go. So I was interested, like, which place, where? And she was like, anywhere. Anywhere.
Wow.
I just close my eyes and I just think of Costa Rica and I think of myself in Costa Rica, and that immediately calms me down. And I thought that was so beautiful.
It is, definitely. It's one of the most beautiful things I've heard about this country.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we are fortunate to live here. So we are the ones that should value it the most, right? Sometimes it appears as if we don't. So as a society, as Costa Ricans, we have to work on that as well. But you're completely right.
Yeah. And so one last thing, Charlie, instead of just being a spectator or just being a traveler visiting, how we've talked about this, but how are other ways that I can get involved? Like I can be an active participant of Costa Rica's environment?
Yeah, that's a good question because not everyone can come here for 3 months and volunteer, right? Saving the
True.
turtles or any of the volunteering programs that you can find in the country.
Yeah.
So I think one of the best ways is, first of all, as we mentioned before, like doing your homework, like understanding who are you hiring, who are you giving your money, which is your energy and your time to. Is it a good company, right? Is it making good things for the local communities, for the environment? Or is it just like a master operator who crams 100 people in a bus and has a huge impact and then doesn't leave anything right to the community? So doing your homework about that, lowering your expectations, being open, or maybe not lowering, opening your expectations to anything that will happen while you travel. Sharing your experiences. Sharing is caring, right? Sharing the great food that you have, sharing that very wise old man who probably taught you how to do one thing or the other, how to cut your banana or anything like that. Probably sharing, I don't know, a hike you made, things like that, sharing in social media. But to me, what I found the most important way of not being just an spectator, getting involved, is actually appreciating the local culture for what it is, right? So we tend to compare. This is something that our brains do all of the time. So when we see something that is new to us, we
Mm-hmm.
always use as a reference something that we already know. And sometimes these comparisons we make are not so fair, right? We tend to think like, this place is this place is that, this person is this person is that. So when we talk about a different culture, maybe shutting that up for a while, for a couple of days, and saying, this is different. Costa Rican culture is different, and I'm gonna make my effort to appreciate it. And that way, all of the good things of the Costa Rican culture will actually get to you. So the things that we do right, you're going to be able to copy that and implement it back home. You're going to be able to get inspired by that. And that way you stop being a spectator. You stop just seeing what they are doing and you start actually doing the good things that they are doing. And I know that as Costa Ricans, we have a lot to teach to other countries, to other people. And also, I know that we have a lot to learn. So, but basically, if you're also getting engaged with the local culture, they will also be open for you to say, hey, these things could be improved, or you could do better at this and that, and they will be open to listening that because you were open in the first place, right? You were respectful in the first place, and you were eager to listen to them and what they had to teach you. So I would say that's the key, like how to stop being a spectator and start getting involved. Stop making comparisons, get engaged with people, learn from them, and teach them as well if you have something to share.
I love that. I think that's amazing advice. And I'm not going to add anything to it. I just have one last question. What is Oropopo?
Well, I cannot believe this is gonna be like the end, right? It's funny. Oropopo, I actually have it here. Let me show you what is Oropopo. This beautiful owl here. The reflection of the monitor doesn't allow us
You can
to
see
see it.
myself, but I'll
Yeah,
share a picture. It's a novel.
yeah. It's the largest owl in the country, and people always ask us why Oropopo. Well, it's because of the sound that it makes, right? I'm very bad, but I'm gonna try, right? Okay. It makes something like, right? So it sounds a little bit like Oropo.
It sounds like it.
And why an Oropopo, right? To name the company. Well, it actually wraps up everything that we've talked about up to this point because the Oropopo The Oropopo is the largest nocturnal predator that we have in our forest. So this is a bird that doesn't miss anything that's going on, right? Um, if a if a twig falls from a tree, the Oropopo notices. So that's what we want to emulate. That's our inspiration. We want to be like the Oropopo. He flies silently, smoothly through the forest, but he notices everything, and he's always paying attention. And he's so keen, right? All his senses are so equalized with the forest. So we find inspiration in that. That's what we want to transmit to people. We want people to feel like Oropopos in the forest, and we thought that it was a perfect analogy, right? When people are mostly used to seeing the owl like as a wisdom symbol, right? People think, well, we are not using it as a wisdom symbol, but more like a behavior. Uh, we wanna behave. We wanna be like the Oropopo when we are visiting a natural environment.
I love that. And how can people find you? Website, Instagram?
Yeah, we mostly post on Instagram,
Yep.
Oropopo Experience from Costa Rica. And we do have our website where people can book tours with us, or where they can get in touch with us through email. So I would recommend the website and Instagram,
Is it oropopoexperience.com?
oropopoexperience.com. Yep.
Yeah. I know that you do group tours and you also do private ones as well, right?
Yeah, we do group tours, which are small groups. We don't do more than 7 people on a group, and
Yeah.
private tours for people who want to have like a guide, a biologist guide, very important, biology major all by themselves, which is
Right.
also great. I recommend that a lot. Our people are super, I don't know, I would like to be like them, like our guides. They are my role models.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I have been with a few of them and they are definitely amazing people, and for sure you're going to have an amazing experience. So Charlie, it was amazing having you here again. I was very much looking forward to this recording, and we're going to have much more, right? We're gonna come and talk into the next 3 months of the year at some point soon. And yeah, thank you for sharing your wisdom, and I appreciate your time.
You too. I am very, very thankful. And I had a great time talking all of these things with you. Really, it made me, as I was saying things, I was like, oh, yeah, this is such a good idea. I have to write it down. And yeah, I was also very looking forward to this moment. And I'll be very glad when we cover the next months of the year.
Sure will. Speak soon then.
See you. Bye bye.
Thank you for tuning in with us and giving us such a luxury as the gift of your attention and your time. I learned so much from Charlie, and we had a blast recording this episode that we can't wait for the new ones talking about the upcoming months of the year. We already have so many ideas. I'm absolutely positive that this episode came with a lot of golden nuggets for you too. So if I may be so bold as to ask, could you please like this episode and subscribe to my YouTube channel? It would really help to get this out there to more people and spread the word on a different way of being a traveler, a conscious traveler, a much more rewarding experience for sure. Until next time, and hopefully see you on the tropical side. Pura vida.